Good evening, everybody. To the big night we've all been waiting for, working for, preparing for. Uh, Thanks for joining. I think it's going to be a historic night for the good. Um, I'm very, very fortunate to be joined by David Pepper, who is one of my true heroes.
Yeah.
Most of us know him as a novelist, but he also dabbles in politics on the side. And I'm guru of all things Ohio. And Matthew Dowd, who just joined us from Greater Wimberley.
No, I'm in Marble Falls. I moved to Marble Falls,
Ah, okay.
which is another section of the hill
That's good. They'll
country.
never find you
That's
there.
great.
That's good. That's good. Um, and Matthew and I worked together in the Bush campaign in 2000, 2004. From 1999 to 2000, we shared a fallout shelter as an office. And he was the chief strategist for the last Republican campaign that actually won the popular vote, which is some reason to believe that he knows what he's talking about. He's somebody I admire tremendously. He was very vocal early on. After the election, we had a break with the president over the war in Iraq, and I've always really admired him for it. And he also has a kind of Rain Man quality of numbers. He's a good guy to take to Vegas with you. And Joe Trippi, the great Democrat consultant. Always hated going against Joe when I was doing races. Joe and
Likewise.
well, theoretically, we taught a course together at the Chicago Institute of Politics, which meant that I mostly shut up and listened to Joe. But look, let's kick this thing off. And just the obvious question has got to be, David, let's just go to you. How are you feeling about things?
Someone gave me the term nauseously optimistic, like nervous, but I feel pretty good. I mean, I think all probably thought the last week was a good close. Trump, you couldn't have written a worse close. You hope that matters with undecided voters or those making a decision, or even turnout itself. I mean, you guys probably have more up to the date information than I do, but I'm hearing about very good turnout numbers in Pennsylvania and the cities. Philadelphia in particular, which is making folks in Pennsylvania, I think, feel pretty good. I was at polls all day trying to get this issue 1 anti-gerrymandering thing passed in Ohio, so I don't have the latest here. But obviously, the hope is that what we were hearing out of Pennsylvania is the case. And, the greatest of all scenarios would be that a state like North Carolina surprises us. So this doesn't go on for days, but it ends up being clear that Trump lost. And even those who might be tempted to go along with plans to undo the outcome think, it's not worth it. He lost a state that was so surprising. It's clearly over. That's obviously the best case scenario. But I am encouraged about what I've heard, particularly from Pennsylvania, from people on the ground there.
Mr. Dowd, how are you feeling?
How I feel, I have felt pretty assured about this race for 6-7 weeks.
Yeah.
I haven't gone off of that. I think the race has been, despite of what the media conversation has been exceedingly stable for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the race was the best she could do is 3 or 4 point margin over him nationally. I actually think that's where she's going to end up. And I have some reason to believe, just from my analysis of the exit poll stuff I have, that's where she's going to end up. I mean, it's interesting. What people don't do in this is when you get the initial exit poll data, like who is it and how is she performing and what are his favorable numbers and what's Biden's approval number. And what you do is you take those numbers and compare it to the polls that were done. And the polls that more closely matched, like Biden's approval number or Trump's favorability number, her favorability numbers, is what is going to give you the result you think. And the ones that most closely match what the exits are telling us are the ones that have her up 3 or 4.
Right.
The ones that had her even had them with equal favorable numbers, had Biden's approval much worse, and that's not the electorate that so far we're seeing in this. So that's a very good sign. This isn't so far unfolding, I think, like the Republicans or Trump thought it was going to unfold. Where I think up until this morning, they thought they had a real shot at winning the national popular vote. The other thing, which I think is actually more important, is the election returns in Indiana.
Yeah.
And to me, I wrote down some key counties 2 days ago in Indiana that would tell me what the story is. Tell me, is my assumption about this electorate correct, or is it wrong?
Right.
And my assumption was that she was going to perform at least close to what Biden did, or better in some places. And all of the returns so far in Indiana, she's doing better than Biden did in 2020.
Yep.
Especially in a county like Hamilton County,
Yeah.
which is a very similar county to what other counties we're going to be talking about in Michigan and in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Biden lost it by 7. Right now, she's winning it.
Where is Hamilton? I should know this. I work
It's
in
right north of Indianapolis.
Okay.
It's a suburban county. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, no, Matthew, that was one of my counties that I've been looking at, watching this come in. Same way, same thing. Biden lost it by 6, 7. She's winning it by 2, maybe 3. We'll see what happens here. But it's clear that if that's happening in like counties in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, even in terms of that is the first big sign I saw of real data, of real votes coming in.
Well, and
made me think, real results. I mean, that made me.
And we have to see what's beyond. What I always look for, as you do, Joe, is a whole county 100% in, and then you can compare it. I mean, because then you. But
because we don't know.
We don't know what's counted or what's but you take a look at all the other counties that are 60, 70% in Indiana, and she's doing better than Biden did.
Yeah.
Including the counties on the Michigan border.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I think is really important. So it's not just the counties like barely the ones that are close. It's like if she's not losing by 42 points and she's only losing by 36 points in rural counties, that's a huge good sign. It means that there's not this huge deluge of Republicans and a lack of Democratic turnout.
Are you seeing anything you looking at Kentucky at all?
Same thing. Same thing's going on in Kentucky. And right now they only have rural counties in. But, see, there's a perfect example. Oh, look at that. So that number's right in front of you. So
that's big.
That's big. And 91%'s in. And Kentucky is rural counties. She's doing 3 or 4 points better than Biden did in Kentucky. And so, keep in mind, he won the popular vote by 4.5 points. So if I were Republicans looking at these counties coming in non-battleground states, the thing they're going to have to hope is that a battleground state is performing different than the other states.
Right.
Well, and look, I have to say, from what I can see, the Harris campaign has put together the best ground operation that we've ever seen. From what I'm hearing, they were saying that they were doing 2,000 doors a minute for 10 hours a day, Saturday and Sunday in Pennsylvania. Which, I mean, wow. I just think about how much fun it would be to work in a campaign like that. So, you're putting together a rally and you go, do you want Lady Gaga? Or do you want like Cardi B? What about Beyonce? You want her?
Well, the other thing you saw is they had shots this morning of all of these people in lines to get on buses.
I know.
And when I saw the shot, I thought it was voters.
I did too, Matthew. Exactly. Yeah. I thought, wow.
It was volunteers getting on a bus to go to Philadelphia.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of volunteers out there in Pennsylvania. It's amazing.
I mean, we were doing this, Matthew.
I feel. I'm waiting for and we're going to get a big, right while we're talking, we're going to get a big voter drop in Georgia. And I would just counsel people that are listening and we've had this conversation, Stuart, is every piece of data isn't going to be good.
Yeah.
What you look for is 20 pieces of data, are 14 of them good? That's what you're looking for. And right now, the majority of pieces of data coming in are good.
Yeah, I mean, the odds are it will not be unanimous.
What?
It will not be unanimous.
Well, tend to look. I think all of these. My experience has been that in the end, shifts do usually go in one direction. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not saying it by the same margin or anything
Yeah,
like
you've been
that.
saying that, Matt.
The movement all goes one way, and so far, all the signs I'm seeing is the movement is going towards Harris, and I see very few signs, if any, of things moving towards Trump anywhere. I mean, that doesn't mean it won't happen, but so far, there's
Yeah.
been no indication.
And David, talk to us about the Senate race there. What?
I mean, I just say it's very tight. I think Sherrod closed very strong. I was saying that if Seltzer in Iowa was capturing something with women over
Which she
50,
was.
60, Bernie Marino might have had the greatest gaffe since the Madison Square Garden rally, because he named those women on tape and said, "I don't know why women over 50 care about abortion."
Right.
And that let in the middle of like the most expensive Senate race in history, where everyone is saying everything. Here you have an ad which features the candidate saying that to
Yeah.
the very part of the electorate that the Seltzer poll shows us is the one that could be determining the outcome. So I think Sherrod closed very well because of that gaffe. The ads were women saying, "Well, I'll tell you why I care," and they were playing the Marino statement. And not to get carried away, but that Indiana, if we see similar trends, because you all know Indiana is right there with us. If you see similar trends of those points moving just a little bit in those rural counties to the left, that obviously bodes well for Sherrod. But this has been a dogfight. It's been a ton of money. It's been relentless. But I do think the gaffe around women was a bad one. I think Sherrod capitalized on it very well. That was the closing message in many ways. And the hope is what you just described in Indiana is happening, in the rural parts of Ohio, including in the part that abuts Indiana all the way up and down our entire boundaries. So but it was very close going in. I've always thought Sherrod was ahead by a little bit. Hopefully that holds up today.
Yeah. Matthew, when you looked at these exits and they showed that democracy was, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but and the economy and abortion were the top three issues. I looked at, my view was that was very good for her. She's not losing the economy by very much, and she's winning abortion overwhelmingly.
It's incredibly good for her. I mean, if you look at the top three issues, they're the democracy, abortion, and the economy. And on the economy, when they asked the exit poll question of who can handle the economy, who do you trust to handle the economy, Trump only had a 4-point advantage on that issue.
Yeah, Romney won by 17 and lost.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And so I think all of that, and there's another interesting data point, not just keep going on, that in the 2020 exit polls, whites had a 57% favorable view of Trump. In these exit polls, whites have a 49% favorable view of Trump. It's an 8% drop in his favorability in this poll.
Yeah, but Matthew, he skyrocketed with black men. He's up there at 100% favorability.
He has had a slight improvement in favorable numbers, actually, interestingly, among black men and Hispanics. But, I mean, as you guys know, 70% of the electorate's going to be – I mean, if he dropped 8 points on favorability from the 2020 election among whites.
Yeah.
Problem. Yeah, you start running out of customers. And Joe, did you the democracy numbers surprise you?
No, not at all. I mean, look, I think it just says that people are starting to get. That a lot of Americans are getting exactly what this is about, and they're putting that ahead of. I believe this back in 2022 when we had the economy. You had inflation sky high. You had gas prices that were massively higher than they are today. If it was going to be, if the economy was going to overrun an election, it should have happened in 2022. But it was post-Dobbs. It was people were starting to understand the threat that Trump really was, and I think they really understand it today, particularly after Madison Square Garden and several gaffes that they did. Or just crazy things they did the last 2 weeks. And I think I wasn't surprised by that at all. I think again, Matt's right. I mean, what I'm looking for now is real data. And when you're looking at even these counties that we're putting up here, occasionally that pop up on the screen, I mean, she's doing 11 points better, 8 points better. And if that's happening in Ohio and in here's Douglas County, she's doing 7 points better right now. It's if that's happening in these places, we know what's happening with the turnout in urban areas.
Yeah, I mean, let's just pause for thinking a second about, if I woke you up in the middle of the night and I said, so the black woman is going to do better with rural whites than the guy from Scranton, we would have said, I don't know. Like, that's a head scratcher. I'm not sure I would really. And I think it goes to a credit to the kind of campaign she's running.
Yes.
Going back to the convention when she gave that speech, that really any of our old Republicans that we admired could have given that speech, pretty much acceptance speech, and how they really went about, I think, very deliberately trying to capture patriotism and to make her the patriotic choice.
I would also say, I mean, you guys have already said this. I don't remember a candidate using surrogates as well in my life. I mean, you mentioned the big stars, Liz Cheney, that lieutenant governor from Georgia who was like phenomenal at the convention, really a bulldog. I mean, it wasn't just like one stop. I mean, they were all over all the time. I was in Ohio when we, frankly, were more of a swing state. I didn't see nearly the number of big time proxies coming through that, looking at just at the news every night, they were everywhere all the time, getting big crowds, crossing party lines, really, really impressive use of so many people who, to their credit, a lot of whom, like Liz Cheney, were boldly kind of saying, this is different, vote across party lines and others. So I think they were really smart with the way they've used a lot of different people to help.
Yeah, after you saw these sort of back and forth, like, was it her going with
see, like, look at this numbers. Look at this. This is Georgia. Yeah. And that's 85% in, right? And
where is Union County? I have no idea.
It's a rural thing in the middle of nowhere. It's a small county. It's only going to vote like 15,000 people total, 15,000 people. But 2 points in a state he barely won. And I just saw Rockdale County.
Yeah. That was bigger.
She's got 4 or 5 points increased margin over what happened in 2020. What's interesting about this is it's going to make it easier to make because we have a state that basically broke even. So if the people that are
in the little
room in the little bunker going to make the call, and they start getting county after county like this, where she is, even if it's approved by 2 points or 1 point, it's going to make it much easier for them to call.
Yeah. And, it also bolsters the Seltzer poll in terms of being closer to what's really going on out there. Because she had the thing, I think the last one was Trump had been up 4 or something like that now, and it swung to Harris being up 3. And if you actually look at some of these switches, this movement of 7 points, 2 points here and there, even David makes that Ohio poll that had her losing, I think, Ohio by 4, that people kind of like went, I don't know, maybe that's really happening. I mean, and if that's happening, then Sherrod Brown's in a lot better shape. Maybe Chester in Montana is as well.
Yeah, I think we got what people. I'm sorry, David. I know you did have Ohio, and I wasn't going to do Ohio.
Oh, go ahead.
There was 4 pieces of data that came in simultaneously, and we only focused on one piece, which was the Seltzer poll, because it was because it went from he won, now he's behind. But we had an Ohio poll that showed it at 4 or 5. We had a Kansas poll that showed it at 5, and we had Nebraska 2, which showed her with a 12-point lead in Nebraska 2. Those 4 pieces of data all were saying the same exact thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you know,
And
I
we're
always
seeing it
think,
now in some of these. That's what I'm saying. We're seeing that reflected in some of
votes.
these rural results. We'll see,
Yes.
yeah, in some of these votes.
well, you know, I always like when I look at these polls when they coincide with what you're seeing in a campaign.
Yes.
So, I mean, we just say like, well, maybe like talking about Arnold Palmer's dick wasn't the greatest thing in the world, you know? I mean, maybe there's a reason that other people haven't done that, or talking about executing, you know, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and political opponents and going out and having this, you know, I don't know. It's been a while since we had a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden. You know, people probably miss it. Let's have one. And then, you know, he spent 2 days saying he wasn't a Nazi. You know, I mean, when is the last good day Donald Trump had? And I think it was at the convention.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it's a
Day after
campaign
he
that
got-
never
the day after he got
adjusted
the day after he got shot.
the day after he got shot. Yeah.
Well, and he went quiet for a little bit too, and that was actually not bad. And then all of a
They
sudden,
were
like
helping him.
3 or 4 weeks ago, he just started making all this noise again to lead to this terrible close that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's what he 2016. People forget that he basically went quiet for the final 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he did.
a couple weeks ago, there was this creeping feeling that he went quiet, and you could just feel the post-Democratic convention bounce just slowly going away. And then, I mean, Matthew, maybe you were maybe more comfortable than I was. I had this sinking feeling, and then obviously he really went off doing what he's been doing, and obviously you felt it moving the other way ever since.
I just think races, the fundamentals of a race. People we too often concentrates in the vicissitudes of the day, and
Right.
the fundamentals of a race is what they're so hard to overcome.
Right.
And the fundamentals of this race, the structure was so settled into if there was an alternative other than Biden that was presentable to the American public was going to go for it.
Right. And Stuart, you've been saying that with your 47% for months, which has made me more comfortable. I mean, it's always been at that 47, and the rest was there for grabs, and it should have been more attainable for Kamala Harris than Trump, who's never gotten above that.
Yeah, no, we've all been in sync, I think, pretty much on the structure of the race being, being Trump essentially stuck in that 46, 47 range, and whether she could consolidate the rest of it, maybe in a way that Biden would have had obviously a much tougher job of doing. But she, I think, clearly has, and particularly if you start looking at, again, these rural numbers that are coming in where she's, doing 2 points, 7 points, whatever, better than Biden in 2020. That's a huge problem for folks in Trump land.
Which, I mean, this was something that Obama did when he overperformed. When Obama won Indiana.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. He won Indiana in 2000. I made a list of the counties in 2008, in 2012, 2016, and 2020. And her numbers right now in Indiana are coming closer to Obama's 2012 numbers than Biden's 2020 numbers.
Wow.
It's a big deal. It's unbelievable Obama won Indiana.
In 2008, I know it's crazy.
It really is amazing.
It's insane. There were 2 states that Obama won and then Romney won, Indiana and North Carolina.
Right.
Hey, guys, I'm going to have to jump.
Okay, Matthew.
If you guys have time, I'll call back in later.
Yeah, do that. I've already gone on Polymart since we've been talking. Right?
Keep the numbers. Keep those county numbers coming. They are really helpful.
We need some whole counties, and once we have whole counties, we'll know.
Agree.
Right.
Thanks for being with us. Thanks, Matthew.
Well, Ohio closes in 4 minutes. You guys know this. Our early vote numbers come in pretty quickly, and it's going to be a big tranche of them. Now, I think more Republicans voted earlier than the past, like a lot of other states. So the comparisons won't be as easy because there's a bigger Republican chunk, I think, that voted early this time than 4 years ago. But we'll get a lot of numbers by 7:45.
Well, David, people forget early voting was the thing that we Republicans did best.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we always prided ourselves on this. That would run up the score and try to hang on an election day. And, all the stuff I was seeing, like Elon Musk was like, look at this big vote, Republican vote in Pennsylvania that, compared to 4 years ago. And it's like, dude, Republicans outperformed Democrats in the early voting every time since 1988. And we lost it every time in Pennsylvania. So,
a little history, too. It was Republicans in Ohio that expanded early vote after the 2004 election.
Yeah.
Bob Taft and the Republican legislature are the ones who actually made it no fault weeks, a lot of weeks. They've curved back since Obama won, but that was a Republican trifecta that expanded early vote, to their credit, after 2004 basically proved unmanageable. And so,
people forget in 2004, Bush did not declare victory that night.
Yeah.
Even though, I was in Bush world, and we knew we had won because there wasn't enough provisional ballots out there. He would have had to get like 80% or something provisional ballots. But I just think it's an interesting comparison of where the party was in.
Yeah.
So Bush wouldn't go out and declare victory because there was theoretically enough provisional ballots out that if somehow Kerry way overperformed with those, he could win Ohio, which would mean he'd win the presidency.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that people were urging Bush to go out and claim it, and he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until the next afternoon we had that weird event at the RNC where he declared victory. It was very weird and anticlimactic, but. And now,
guys, I got to jump as well, real quick.
All right, you go.
Thank you for having me on, and all this data has made me feel a lot better. So keep sharing those county by county numbers.
Yes.
Okay.
Whoever's doing that, keep the hope coming. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all you've done. All sides.
No, David, thank you, man.
You too, man.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
And congratulations on the novel. Yeah. So I don't know, Joe. We always say, would you rather be your guy or the other guy? I'd rather be our guy, right?
Yeah. No, look, I think the turnout in Philly and a lot of the places that we need the big turnout is happening. I think you're seeing this shift of Kamala in these rural counties that we're seeing, whether it's 2.7 points. Like David said, even if it's just 2 points across those counties, in places where we won by 14,000 votes, that's gonna matter. There's Harrison County, a shift of 8 points there.
Those are big numbers.
Yeah, and so when you look at that, it's just we'll see. But right now, no, I've talked about this. We always thought the structure of this race was pretty solidly in place, and it was just a question of could things move? It's got to be like a 9-point shift or something, not a 99-point shift. But no, it's all good. It's all good.
All right, so we're going to kick you out, Joe, and bring in some professional talent.
They're moving in right now on me.
And let's bring in.
Oh my gosh! Are you just gonna
Hey, Jen.
Here she is. Oh my gosh!
Thank you for joining.
It's my pleasure.
I like meeting you this way. And if you,
you see how we have the technology to do this in a very special way.
But somebody should get a screenshot of this. Oh, well, there's too late.
I was going to say, come back.
But have you guys met each other?
We have. And I
want to besties. Come on.
Oh, wait, not in person. No, not in person.
No, never in person.
Going back to We're Speaking, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jen was like one of our favorite guests.
Maya's one of my favorite people.
Yeah. Well, join the crowd. It's a big
It is one of my favorites.
Well, Jen, let's start with you. How are you feeling about things?
I feel good. I feel really good, actually. I was doing an interview last week with Greg Sargent,
Yep, I know.
And
he used to always fight, and he turned out to be right, and I was wrong.
He's really smart. But in the conversation that I was having with him, I realized that Kamala Harris is absolutely going to win. And once I made that realization, I was like, calm, very calm. Mm-hmm. And so I'm still a little, nervous. I have my sweet wine and I have some Cheez-Its tonight, but I've been calm for the last few days. And the reason why I realized that Kamala Harris is going to win is because what I had been noticing for the last few weeks is that no two people are seeing the same election. And I think that, right, because our algorithms feed us different content and right. And so in that conversation, I realized that Greg had no idea what women were seeing for this election. And that my view of what was happening was so different from his view of what was happening. And that I realized that, in fact, the way that the algorithms are configured and the way that the media environment works today is that there is actually no way that men could know what this election is like for women. And once I realized that, and I also, I should be honest, I went to the Harris rally in Houston, and I think that sort of also informed my sense of what was going on. But once I realized that since men don't know what women are talking about, they don't see the secret notes in so men aren't seeing the secret notes in the bathrooms, right? Men aren't in the mom chat groups. Men aren't, chatting with, and this is my own, experience, but chatting with other middle school moms, talking about whether our daughters have their periods or not, and whether or not we should tell their pediatrician, right? Like, moms are freaked out. And, what I saw at the Harris rally was an amazing energy, an amazing amount of positivity, more excitement than I saw in 2008 when I went to see Obama give a rally in Houston. More people, more energy, more excitement. And so, you know what? I just decided I was going to trust women. And that was actually the message of the rally, right? Was vote, trust women, protect our freedom. And I really, became calm after that. So things are playing out well for me.
And Maya, how are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm having camera and computer issues over here.
You're very active.
It was lagging. It was lagging, but I'm feeling really, really good. My energy right now is feeling really positive, and I think it's part of because of what Jen was talking about. Is I don't think men have been listening and don't know exactly what women are feeling and thinking, and in particular, Black.
Mm-hmm. Oh wait, we're losing you, Maya. We lost your sound.
No.
I don't know what happened to your sound there. Probably the Russians. As soon as you started,
she's speaking truth.
Okay. All right. Well, while you get your sound figured out, Jen, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
That rally that we saw Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been part of putting together a million rallies, and I just look at what they're doing, and I just think, wow. I mean, they're taking it to another level. And it is so hard to do at that level. You're basically putting on like a one-night convention.
Yeah.
And they're doing it, the depth of their talent of operatives and advanced staff must be just really deep. Because usually, you have a few people who are good and you got to move them around. And these rallies, I don't know when they started planning that Houston rally, but I would say somebody decided to do that a month ago. Wow. They didn't announce it, but they start putting together the pieces.
Yeah.
But
it was amazing.
What did it feel like to be there?
It was crazy. It was chaos. There were so many people there. And everybody's waiting in line. Everyone's so excited to get in, and we get in, and there's a DJ playing, and we stand there in the 90-degree heat for 4 hours or more. We're dancing, right? We're singing. People are doing the hustle. Like it was a full-on party for 4 hours while we're waiting for this thing to start in the 90-degree heat.
Wow.
It was, I don't like crowds usually, but it was amazing. It was such a great feeling, so much good energy. It was mostly women. There were some men there, but I would say it was 70% women. It was amazing just to be a part of it.
Let me ask you something. As a guy, I'm one of these guys who doesn't see this,
Yeah. There's no way you could know. It's no slam on you.
Yeah, no. I don't belong to any moms groups. So
fair enough.
One of the things that really shocked me about the Seltzer poll was that she had Harris's best performing group, women over 65.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, are the most reliable voters. So over 65 are the most reliable, and women are more reliable than men. So it's kind of like if you wanted to do well with one group, it'd be that versus Trump, who says, like, I'm going to get a bunch of young men. Like, good luck, dude. Good luck. Half of them don't have any idea, like, how to, where their polling places is. But talk to me about that. Why do you think that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, and so if you look at the two campaign strategies, Trump was like, I'm going to go completely into the meme warlords or whatever. And I'm going to go on all these male-dominated podcasts, and I'm going to speak about, men's hatred of women or whatever, men's rights. I don't know what the heck they're talking about. Right. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that. Right. And that's going to be our demographic. We're going to be
white men of America.
Yeah. We're going to be masculine. And right, like fascism is premised on like strong masculinity. Right. So they're like went for it. They're like, we're going to go full fascist. We're going to go Christian nationalist, and we are going to activate all of these male voters. This was their plan. I mean, we imagine based on what they did. The Harris campaign did not actually center like herself as a woman, but she centered women's issues, not just abortion rights as healthcare, but kitchen table issues and cost of living, caring for elderly parents, raising children, right? Like all kinds of women's issues. So not just the one issue. And then Trump's campaign is like, I'm going to alienate the demographic that votes in greater numbers, right? That is more reliable. And I'm going to try to activate these men. That is a failed strategy. Like, as long as women have the right to vote, I mean, in early voting, they were up 10 points, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to not vote. And when you take away the rights, and the way that the Harris campaign had talked about abortion, especially at the rally that I was at in Houston, it was about abortion as a health issue. It was about the fact that 15 to 20% of women who get pregnant are going to need some kind of life-saving abortion care, right? Like in this country, it's dangerous to get pregnant in America. And so it was story after story of women who had life-threatening conditions. When they needed emergency medical care the most, they were not able to get it. Not because they couldn't afford it, not because it wasn't available, right? But because Donald Trump said, you can't have this life-saving medical procedure done. And I don't think you can hear that message more than once as a woman and not feel it. And so the TikToks have been incredible. The young women, so it's not just the older women over 55, over 65. The young women are teaching each other about the Access Hollywood tape, right? And they're saying
that. I just read that it was news to them because well, how old were they when it came out?
Because they were children. We would not have exposed them to that.
At the time, politics wasn't so scary that we were trying to keep people away from things. But now it's like it's gotten to a point where it's like, oh, really? Those things were said and he still got elected? Like, I think that's very shocking to.
And my dad is going to vote for him?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was definitely an awakening for a lot of young women. And I think, the storytelling has been much better on Kamala Harris's campaign because the stories are rooted in truth and they resonate with people. People know women who have had issues with, with their health and their reproductive health and having to go to another state to find an OBGYN. So these are rooted in real stories. Whereas Trump's campaign, every story that they generated just rang false. And there's something about a false story, a fabricated story that I think just really is off-putting for, I think, anybody, regardless of whether it was somebody who voted for him in the past or whether it was somebody who was a moderate and undecided. Like, people don't like fake stories.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, if you wanted to have a reasonable discussion about immigration, which, we've tried to have in this country for a long time, the surest way to make sure you don't have it is to talk about people eating cats and dogs. Like once you do that, it's like having an astronomy lesson that says, well, we have to talk about Area 51 first. Because that's like, we all know. And we didn't go to the moon. We know that, right?
Right.
It's kind of like, okay. Like,
Well, and it's like what Kamala Harris said at the DNC. He's an unserious man. Yeah. And so when you think about the issues that they put to the forefront, they showed themselves to be very unserious people. And because I think it was something 35% of people are concerned about the state of democracy right now. And so when you look to the two parties and what they're discussing, you're going to go, okay, one party is discussing actual issues that will affect the day-to-day lives of people, and one party is talking nonsense. They are unserious. They can't solve our problems.
So, these numbers here, can you put them back up there if we could, please? I don't know where Stark County, Ohio is, but it's the point being that Matthew and David Pepper were making in the previous episode is that if she is doing better by 11 points, if you're it's in Canton, okay, you sort of like the Trump campaign sort of becomes like they're losing $5 in every sale, but they're going to try to make it up in volume. It's just, you can't get there with that math. And these are big numbers to have these variants.
It's a big shift. I read a really interesting account of why Republicans might be leaving the Republican Party this year and voting for Harris instead. And we've seen, of course, so many leaders and political figures saying, I'm going to endorse Harris. This is where I'm going to vote. I don't trust Trump for lots of reasons, explaining all that. But in terms of like this just sort of regular party folks, Karen Stenner, do you know her work? She is a researcher of political psychology. And
what is her name again? I'm sorry.
Karen Stenner, Stenner. So she wrote a book about authoritarianism. It's her research area in political psychology. And last week she wrote an article in the Boston Globe that really explained something to me that I think will likely be part of this coalition that's going to elect Harris. And what she explained is that, of course, there are authoritarian voters, in the Democratic Party. It's a small minority of the Democratic Party, more of them in the Republican Party. But the Republican Party is also classical conservative personalities. And the classical conservative personality does not like change. They like stability. They're very defensive of the Constitution and the rule of law, right? And they like things to be very similar and very safe and very protected, right? But authoritarians want a strong leader. They want to defend group norms. They want, they don't mind maybe the chaos if the chaos is going to, ultimately protect them or whatever. And so what Stenner argued is that the Republicans that are true conservative Republicans of personality types, that they find the authoritarians and the authoritarian leader very threatening, right? And so they're the ones that completely rejected Trump after January 6th. They don't like that he's right. They don't like that he's never admitted that he lost the election. They see him as an agent of chaos and as a threat. And they see Kamala Harris as being someone who is embracing and protecting the rule of law, right? Someone who was a prosecutor and someone who talks about standing up for, the rights of other people and things like that. And I found that to be a very interesting argument. And I do think that there's this coalition between conservative Republicans, never Trump Republicans like yourself, and people who became never Trump Republicans after January 6th. Women voters, I think, across the political spectrum. And then, of course, young voters getting activated by issues of climate change, by gun rights and gun safety, by, abortion rights, all of these sort of things. And then on top of that, of course, there's that overarching issue of democracy, which is the thing that, we all talk about all the time. And so I really think that's going to be the story that we tell, in a few days or whatever, when we know really what happened.
But looking at these numbers, it looks like we might be able to tell the story sooner.
I think.
What you got?
One of the things that has interested me is comparing the Clinton campaign and the Harris campaign. And is it wrong to say that Hillary Clinton made much more of being the first female president, potentially?
She did.
And Harris has.
Yes.
I think back at this point in 2016, they were there in the Javits Center, and apparently they had some sort of pyrotechnical glass ceiling that when they announced that she had won, was going to crack or something. I'm not
Don't
sure.
bring up the trauma list, Stuart.
I know. I was like,
we don't like that.
We're still there.
There was a
yes, you're right.
deliberate
Absolutely.
decision for her not to talk about
I think that's right.
And not to talk about being the first Black president as much. Which, I always, to me, that seemed very wise. NBA centers don't go around saying, look, I'm really tall. You're like, yeah, I got that. Yeah, I noticed. But it seemed to me sort of like a evolution of a candidacy, where there's sort of a beginning of a normalization of being a woman running for president and the nominee of a major party.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of differences between Clinton and Harris. I think Harris is a better campaigner. I think her campaign was flawless, essentially. And I know that's a point you've made before. I've seen you say that on Twitter. I think that in 2016, it wasn't a good time for Clinton to be running as a woman first, right? And for her advantage or her novelty for her campaign was, that I'm going to break the glass ceiling. When I looked at the data in 2016, opinion polls about feminism and whether or not people supported or identified as feminists, it was really low. There wasn't public approval at that time for feminism. I think that there is more public approval for that now than there was in 2016. And so the campaign didn't quite fit the moment. And unfortunately, I think Hillary Clinton, though she's a great candidate and of course a great leader, she wasn't a good fit for 2016 in that everyone already thought they knew who she was, and she didn't have the opportunity to tell her story. And Kamala Harris, even though she's vice president, when she became the nominee, people were like, who? I'm not sure if I know 2 facts about her. And that really was an opportunity for her, right? She told her story. And the story she chose to tell us about herself was that she had always been a person who protected others. She protected her friend in high school who was being abused by her stepfather. She had a career of protecting others, right? And so she actually used really sort of masculine tropes to talk about herself as a protector of women. And of rights and of freedoms. And so it's a fascinating campaign, and I'm sure that people are going to write a lot of really interesting research about it.
And I talked about this before, but I love the way that she used humor in her campaign. And I don't think that was something that Hillary Clinton could use to her advantage. And I think Republicans, the huge misstep was attacking Kamala Harris right out the gate on her laugh, on her humor, as if to say women aren't allowed to experience joy, that a woman can't both stand in her power and her happiness and her joy. And so I love that her campaign ran with that and was able to create an entire movement around joy and centering that. And so suddenly what could have been a weakness became a point of power. And it's what people have been desperate for, that need to feel belonging built from joy as opposed to belonging built from fear. And so I think a lot of people were very concerned out of the gate, like, oh, vibes, what are vibes? But her campaign has systematically reached out to people throughout so many different demographics and turned those vibes into votes. Like, it feels good to center joy and voting at the same time. And so what I'm so excited about is when she does win, and I'm going to use that language, I'm going to call it into being. When she does win, I think it's going to signal a shift in the way we do politics. I think people are done with the anger politics, and that's across the board. And so for those who have tried that this cycle and are seeing that it's going to fail again, I think they're going to have to do some soul searching. If they're, it might find the soul first, then search within it.
You know, really, one of the things that, well, I never understood this thing that was this sort of rap on her, that she wasn't a very good politician. I mean, it just didn't make sense to me. She won a DA's race against an incumbent, never easy to do. She then got reelected without an opponent, which means she was strong. She then got elected attorney general, and people forget the candidate she ran against was like the great Republican hope not named Schwarzenegger in California, a guy who was a very popular DA in LA County, which is heavily Democratic. She was outspent, and she beat him. And then she got elected to the U.S. Senator, and then she's vice president. So, like, how far would she have gone if she was a good politician? I mean, why do we say this? More people had voted for her than any other woman in history.
We know why people are saying this, Stuart.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
The thing that impressed me so much about her is she never, to me, seemed to try to become something she wasn't. You know, like and I've been around these, you know, sometimes they think, okay, I'm now, you know, I'm going to have potentially like nuclear weapons at my disposal. I need to be like a different person. I need to work at seeming very serious or something. And she didn't feel that need. And, you know, you go back to that debate performance. I think it was the most dominating debate performance I've ever seen in a presidential race. So, you know what, let's look forward and say, you know, she is going to win, which I think she will. What is that going to mean for like your daughters and for other women? I mean,
I think, you know, so when Barbie didn't win the Oscar, I was furious. Partly because I was like, I loved Oppenheimer. I got the IMAX tickets right there, 70 millimeter, the way you're supposed to see it. But I was like, I've seen this before. And this for me is vindication in many levels, because I said, okay, we did well at the box office. We're going to do it at the ballot box. For my daughter to exist in a world where she was raised during a time where Trump was the guy. Trump was the guy. And I remember the day that Trump won, and I was crying on the train, and I think she was 8 at the time, and she had no idea what it would really mean for the world, but she saw everybody on the train crying, and she looked outside and she said, well, I look at the world and it still looks beautiful. And that really hit me. I still cried, but I was like, wow, what this beautiful perspective that we're not going to allow this temporary situation to overshadow what our possibilities are. And so I think any young person right now, it doesn't matter, male, female, anywhere across the gender spectrum, for anyone right now, it's saying, I live in a world where it can seem incredibly dark, but there are possibilities. That somebody who actually believes in hope and bringing people together can actually thrive in this world. And I feel like that's more sustainable. That's what we need. And so for my daughter, for other people's daughters, for their sons, I'm thinking it's like, hey, the bad guy isn't going to win this time. It's a different story.
Jen, what?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So my daughter was 3 when Trump won in 2016. So she's 11, almost 12 now. And, she's thinking about when she gets to vote for the first time. And so one of the things that she's been worried about is that Trump would win and that they would take away women's rights to vote, and she'd never get to vote. She doesn't know about, all the ins and outs of reproductive freedom and, and things like that. We haven't talked about all of that quite in that detail. So she doesn't know that. But, I live in a conservative part of a conservative state. And so she is surrounded with, messages about the male patriarchy, and she doesn't like them. And so I think that for her to be able to see Kamala Harris be president, to her is going to affirm all of the feelings of almost rage even that she has had, in middle school and dealing with boys. And I think it's going to make her feel as though she has value too. And so, yeah, I'm really excited for her to get to see Kamala Harris be president, primarily because I really believe that Kamala Harris is going to be a great president. Not just because she's going to be the first woman president, but when she talks about leadership and she talks about the way that she will lead, I find it really inspiring. It's completely democratic, right? In the ethos of it. She talks about wanting to hear the best argument in opposition to her perspective. She talks about wanting to hear how her policies will impact the people that, they actually will impact. She wants to hear, from academics and from experts in the field. Right? She doesn't want to just make decisions by fiat. She doesn't want to just do it because it's the party. She doesn't want to just do it because of the lobbyists. She wants to do it because it's the right and smart and good thing to do, whatever it is. And so I'm really excited to see that kind of leader, be in public life and to lead this nation. And so I'm excited for all of us, really. But for my daughter, I think she'll get a great example of what democratic leadership looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that really struck me about this campaign was Trump is really bad. And then he went about surrounding himself with people who are worse almost.
Yes.
Elon Musk. I mean, what
Yeesh.
This sort of person. And J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
So, I mean, normally people try to surround themselves with people that will, I'm going to be with people that might get somebody else to order before. So, you see this ad they put out, it had RFK Jr. in it.
It's terrible.
Oh, it's so bad.
I mean, it was like,
so
I thought it was a parody at first. Like,
I laughed out loud when Elon was like doing the thing. I was like, what are we watching? Right? This is what they put together in the final moments? This is the final sketch.
Was so bizarre. My students watched it with me today. We watched both of the final ads, and they didn't know who those people were. They knew who Joe Rogan was. They knew who Elon Musk was. They didn't really know. They kind of knew RFK. They didn't know who those people were. They didn't understand what was going on. They didn't get the memes. They were like, this doesn't even sound like the Trump campaign. The whole thing was bizarre, but it was like a tribute to these billionaires who've been funding his campaign. And it really showed the point that Kamala Harris has been making all along, which is that Trump is, for the billionaires and I'm for the regular people. And so it was fascinating just to compare the two. But it's a thing about, autocrats and about fascist leaders is that they do surround themselves with sycophants, with people who won't tell them the truth and don't give them good information. They themselves are not typically good decision makers. Fascists in power are actually complete failures as leaders. And we could talk about lots of details about that, but it doesn't surprise me that Donald Trump is the way he is. It's part of fascism.
Yeah, it reminds me of when a comedian reaches a certain level in their career and they don't have the same kind of feedback loop that a younger comic who has to prove themselves has. Everybody laughs at everything they say. And so they start to lose touch with what's actually funny. And
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, I mean, as a writer.
Like Trump in front of these, giving these Castro-like speeches. They go on for, an hour and 45 minutes and people are leaving. One of my favorite ads, I put it out the Harris campaign. I think I love a lot of their ads. One of just clips of people behind Trump while he was speaking, falling asleep and yawning, like with nothing else. It was just like, oh, this is so good,
But what's funny is that they're behind him, so it's like maybe it's almost a metaphor for the fact that he doesn't see that.
He doesn't see them, and he just goes on and on.
Exactly. And I wonder, like, in front of, are they being poked, the people in front of them, or you just can't see them because of the lights? But it's like the man has no idea what's happening around him at all and doesn't care. Like, the idea of building consensus, to your point, Jen, is not something that autocrats care about, and it is what I love so much about Kamala Harris and why I think she will be so effective. And like that, there is a uniquely, like, I know I don't want to make it like, oh, the woman candidate, but like that's something that we do very well, build consensus. And so I think it's high time. And, you know, when she says she's going to be a president for all Americans, I believe her. I believe that. She wants to hear, even when she talks about how she's shifted on certain policies, it's because she's listened. And that ability to listen and adapt is it's woman. I mean, women do it well. That's all I'm saying.
Well, here's an interesting Douglas County, Georgia. You know,
that's a lot of
she's adding these votes.
It's racking up.
And, you know, this is a state that was 10,000 difference at the end of the day in 20. So you start getting these small margins. They really add up. If you're the other campaign, you kind of run out of places you're going to start winning. Yeah, you know, because you got to get more votes somewhere. Where are you going to make it up?
That number's huge, right? Like I'm looking at Stuart, that's partly Cleveland, right? Can we put that graphic back up? Let's
see. This is a Georgia.
Oh, this is Georgia. I thought Ohio came up as well.
Yeah, and I must confess, I don't know where Douglas County is. I should. Okay. I worked a lot in Georgia.
There's Ohio.
But there's Ohio, up 10. Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, we should wrap it up here, but can we put back the graphic about Maya's show tomorrow night? Maya, who do you have on the show tomorrow night?
I'm super excited about tomorrow night because tomorrow night we have Allison Reese, who is, if you've seen her do her Kamala Harris impersonation, she is hilarious. She's been on, she was just most recently on, I can't remember which talk show. She's so very funny, has the laugh nailed down. And then Liz Minnella is one of the co-organizers of White Women for Harris. And so, yes, so I have Liz coming on because I'm like, okay, white women, we're going to talk about it. We're going to see where we're at. But Liz is a great friend of mine. We've done a lot of stuff together, and she's an amazing organizer. So we're going to talk about organizing what happens, you know, tomorrow and beyond, because the movement doesn't stop at the election. It keeps going. Yeah. And then with Allison, we're going to have some laughs, as we do on the show. I'm trying to keep it a laughter forward, a comedy forward show, because why so serious? You know, why so serious all the time?
Yeah. Well, and God, can we put up the graphic on Jen's book? Because really, I can't stress how
cute,
how much I learned from this book. You know, I read it when I was writing my last book, and it was sort of like a lot of things I could start to see in color that I was seeing in black and white. That just sort of hearing the words and then getting this texture for what they meant and how they fed into this historical pattern. And I think it's really such a important book. And I hope you're writing another one, but I always hate it when people ask me that. So,
I'm trying to write a book about fascism. I wrote a book about fascism, and we'll see what happens with it. If anyone wants to publish it.
I hope they do, because I love your writing, Jen.
Thank you.
Everybody picked up Jen's book because it's really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm coming to your class.
Joining us. Watch or get the podcast, The Trippi Show, which has just been tremendous, and Enemies List as well, and the Lincoln Project podcast, and then Decoding Fox News, which is super, super smart and interesting, and also very entertaining. So thank you for joining us. Keep the faith, and we'll join you next Tuesday night, and hopefully be talking about all the good things that happened today. Thank you.
Yay! Heart hands.